My name's Carter, and for most of my life, I worked as an electrical contractor along the East Coast, usually restoring or rewiring old coastal buildings, many of them lighthouses. This happened back in 2015, on a job that still makes me feel uneasy whenever I think about it. The thing that always gets me is how backward it all was. Literally, I was sent out to a lighthouse in North Carolina, on a stretch of land so remote, it wasn't even accessible by road. You had to take a short skiff through a marshy channel, dock at a rotted wooden landing, then walk nearly half a mile through overgrowth to reach it. The job was simple on paper: survey the lighthouse for wiring upgrades so it could be turned into a private rental property. The client wanted it off-grid chic. The first thing I noticed was that the lighthouse didn't face the sea. The beacon window, the glass lens at the top, was aimed inland toward the woods. At first I figured it must have rotated originally and had since gotten stuck, but when I got up to the top, I realized there was no mechanism to rotate it. The whole housing was fixed in place, deliberately, and this thing had been built like that, which made no sense. The wiring inside was ancient, cloth-wrapped copper, half of it corroded. But here's the thing, a lot of it had been added later, not original. Someone had come back after the lighthouse was abandoned and run new wires, modern ones, but not to power the light. No, these wires led down into the foundation. There was a service hatch in the floor under the spiral stairs. I lifted it, expecting old maintenance space. Instead, I found a metal ladder bolted to concrete, descending into a small basement chamber I hadn't seen on the blueprints. It was dry and cold, and there were no windows, just walls, painted white, and a weird humming sound in the air, like a distant generator. In the middle of the room, facing a blank wall, was a wooden chair with thick metal clasps on the arms and legs, like something you'd use to restrain a person. And behind it, screwed into the wall, was an old analog speaker. It was silent, but the faint hum was coming from the wiring running to it. The circuit was live. I didn't touch anything. I went back up and tried to shake it off. Maybe it was some kind of repurposed utility room. But that night, I camped in the top room, the old keeper's quarters, and I heard the speaker come on. Faint static at first, then a voice, a man's voice, raspy, whispering something rhythmic, over and over. I couldn't make out the words, but I swear, after about a minute, I heard the chair down below creak, like it had moved. I left everything behind, just grabbed my backpack, and went back through the woods in the dark. Nearly got lost, but I found my skiff and made it to the mainland before sunrise. The client called a week later to ask for my report. I told him the structure was beyond saving, waterlogged, unsafe, should be condemned. The building's still there last I checked, but satellite images show something strange. The inland-facing lens glows, even though there's no grid connection, no power, nothing. I never went back. This second story was told to me by a guy named Leo, a quiet ex-Navy radio operator I met at a bar in Maine in 2019. He didn't say much until I mentioned I did restoration work on coastal towers. Then he said one sentence that chilled me. Asterisk, asterisk, did you ever hear about the one that screams when the fog rolls in? Asterisk, asterisk, he said. It happened back in 2007. His cousin, Mark, had taken a seasonal gig watching over a lighthouse that had been converted into a fog signal station. The structure itself had been automated years ago, but the state still sent a lone caretaker each summer to maintain the signal horn and beacon in log weather conditions. The tower was located on a jagged outcrop called Grindle Point, where the fog would roll in so thick you couldn't see your own hands. Mark had taken the job for the isolation. He'd just gotten out of a bad breakup and wanted to disappear for a bit. For the first couple of weeks, things were fine. Just long days of fixing cables, checking readings, and sleeping in the keeper's loft. Then came the night the beacon wouldn't shut off. The light kept spinning long after the timer expired. Mark had to kill the power manually, and even then, the bulb kept pulsing, dim but steady. He tried removing the housing, and found the wiring was scorched like it had surged internally. The foghorn followed. It started sounding on its own, not at regular intervals, but in strange bursts, short, then long, then rapid-fire blasts that didn't match any coded pattern he knew, and beneath the horn he swore he could hear voices, human ones, rising with each blast, like screams swallowed by the fog. He called the Coast Guard, but they brushed it off. Said their logs showed no unusual activity. so he started recording the sounds on his handheld weather mic. One night, the horn didn't sound at Albot, the screams did. No horn, just the voices, starting as whispers and rising until the windows rattled. When Mark tried to play back the audio, it was blank. The recorder worked fine for weather sounds, but the screaming never registered. He tried again, and again, same result. It was like whatever was screaming didn't exist in any mechanical frequency. He finally left the tower one morning after waking up to find the entire beacon room covered in seaweed, not just on the floor, but smeared in hand-like streaks across the glass, the console, the walls, and the smell like rotting fish and burnt ozone. He rowed himself across the bay in a panic and never returned. The next caretaker sent after him didn't last more than 2 days. Refused to say what happened. Just left in the middle of the night. The lighthouse is still active, still automated, but every now and then, during heavy fog, the horn misfires. Locals say if you listen close, you can hear a second sound riding under it like something trapped inside, screaming to be let out.